Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I am Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear, that's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in, believe me, all sorts of fields.
Oh, yes. We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
Darn tootin', let's go. Well, we got a good show coming up, I think. I think this one's going to be a good one.
Uncle Dan, we sure do. We welcome back our old friend, Professor Jim.
Professor Jim, he's gonna teach us to avoid riding that reason in a circle.
Yeah, well, he's going to try anyway. And then we're going to meet some people who are not Muslims.
Yes, as you will insist.
Yes, they are not Muslims. And then we're going to meet somebody else who is not a Muslim.
Oh no, he's not. We're going to meet the head, the spokesman of the Satanic Temple.
That's right. Our very special guest this week is Lucien Greaves.
Yeah.
I know you're going to love this.
So put on your best black and inscribe a inverted pentagram into something and buckle up, baby.
Stick around.
All right, here we go.
Well, Uncle Dan.
Yes, sir.
We are very lucky to have a guest we haven't had here in a minute.
For a second now, we've got Professor Jim back in the studio finally. Thanks for coming back, Professor Jim.
Gentlemen, good to be back.
That's right. Our resident professor of philosophy who is going to try to help us think better, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, we need our help.
Yes,
we need
indeed.
A lot of it. This country has forgotten how to use its brains. Almost entirely.
Yeah.
Well, the whole world has, really.
A good 50% of us, anyway.
So Jimbo, what have we got on deck for today?
So I went to a fundamentalist evangelical school growing up through 8th grade.
Sure.
Oh, dear God.
And when I was surrounded by these fundamentalist evangelical Christians, the question of does God exist often came up. And
Sure.
if you asked folks, do you believe that God exists? And they said yes. The most common argument you got before that went like this. Well, the Bible says that God exists, and God wrote the Bible, therefore God exists.
Yeah.
Would you encounter this in Mormon culture?
Yeah.
I don't think you were allowed to ask if God exists in Mormon
Even
culture.
the opening move wasn't.
Right. It was just assumed.
Yeah, there were similar kind of apologetics, but a little more kind of cloying and saccharine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but I will say it is a very common thing you'll hear from religious folks, and in fact, even the Bible itself at a number of places will say things essentially along the lines of we believe in God because God doesn't lie, and they're referencing the Bible.
Right.
And this is just a classic example of something that's called begging the question.
Ah, yes.
And it's the most extreme version of begging the question, because it's an instance of what's called circular reasoning. What makes it circular reasoning is when I ask you, Uncle Mark, Uncle Dan, why do you think that God exists, right? Or why do you think that God doesn't exist? I'm asking you to give me an argument. I'm saying, give me a series of reasons that lead to a conclusion, or give me a series of premises that add up to this new thing that you want to convey.
Right.
But notice how that particular argument works. I say, the Bible says that God exists. God wrote the Bible, therefore God exists. But that second premise, God wrote the Bible, already has built into it that God exists. Right. So it really boils down to God exists, therefore God exists.
Right.
And that's the circular reasoning here. You're not providing a series of reasons or a series of premises that add up to something new. You're just saying, I assume this, therefore that's the case.
So the same argument could be made for, say, Spider-Man existing.
How would that work?
Well, just Spider-Man said so.
The comic book says that Spider-Man exists.
There's a book that says Spider-Man is there. He's in the book.
Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first time anyone ever said Spider-Man wrote the Spider-Man comics. I think this is huge.
I'm pretty sure Elon Musk was involved.
Or Peter
something.
Parker wrote the... Is that his name? Spider-Man's?
Yeah, that's his...
okay, good.
Tobey Maguire.
Oof.
Okay.
I nearly pissed off a lot of nerds right there.
I'm just saying, like... When we can assume in one of the premises that the thing is real, then any of the things can be can be proven.
Yeah, if it's what makes it the circle is if the conclusion, if the thing that you're aiming for, right, whatever the conversation is about, if I say, prove this or tell me why that, if the thing that you're trying to aim for is built right into the assumptions that you're making, then that's the circular reasoning, and that's the begging the question. So that's the most extreme version of begging the question, where you're actually sort of assuming the thing that you want to conclude. But it comes in other forms. And you guys actually got exposed to a version of begging the question when you were on Radio West. So tell me if you remember this. It was in the segment where Doug Fabrizio, the host of Radio West, tried to pose to you what he thought was the best argument for the existence of God. And as I recall, it went something like this. It was, in order to have a coherent system of ethics, you need an absolute moral authority. We have coherent systems of ethics. Therefore, there must be some absolute moral authority, therefore God.
Right.
And I remember sort of as I was listening to it, and it was posed to you guys, and you were just sort of like, no. He was basically begging the question. Now, he wasn't, that argument doesn't beg the question in that it assumes the conclusion. But what it does do, right, build into that argument is a premise that says, in order to have a coherent system of ethics, you have to have an absolute moral authority.
Right.
And that's, what makes this begging the question is it's inserted an assumption in the argument that there's no reason to think the debating sides would both agree to.
Right.
Right. Any atheist is going to question that assumption. Any heretic is going to question that.
The assumption that you can't be moral without somebody providing that the structure of your morality.
Exactly. But the argument that he was posing to you works, it assumes that, right? It basically says, look, we assume that it's the case that you have to have an absolute moral authority to have a system of ethics. We've got the system of ethics, therefore we must have the moral authority.
Right.
And that's just not, it's not the case, right? That's a different kind of begging the question because it inserts an assumption that's sort of is a point of dispute in the argument that you're trying to have. Yeah.
So can we also just make a quick distinction between the sort of colloquial use of the phrase "you're begging"? There's a lot of people who would say, that when someone there's this colloquial use of the term "beg the question" that isn't what we're talking about.
That's right. Yeah. So if I said, when someone says, that the Bible exists and God wrote the Bible, therefore, God exists, and Dan, you said, well, and then that begs the question: who really did write the Bible?
Right.
Right. That version, what you're saying is right. That causes me to say we have to address this question next.
Right. It brings up another question.
Exactly.
Right. It demands this question be asked.
Right.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Whereas the way we're using it here is it assumes the question.
Right.
It sort of rather than trying to engage in a back and forth about, figuring out where we disagree or generating some new information, you're either inserting an assumption that's disputable or you're already assuming in your conclusion assumption that, that's the very thing you're trying to prove.
It's as if to say, you're now begging me, you're forcing me to go back and ask you a question about your premises,
make the assumptions more explicit.
Right.
And I will say, I don't think it's just religious folks that do this. Here's an example that you'll sometimes hear from heretics. If you ask them, why don't you believe in miracles? They might give you an argument like, well, miracles violate the laws of nature. Nothing can violate the laws of nature, therefore miracles don't exist.
Right.
But if you're having a conversation with a religiously inclined person, that second premise, nothing can violate the laws of nature, that's exactly what's under dispute if you're having a conversation about miracles, right? They think something can violate the laws of nature.
Otherwise it would not be a miracle.
Exactly. And so when you put that premise into the argument, right, it does come out that, miracles can't be. But you've sort of, rather than having a conversation about the nature of miracles and violating laws of nature, you've just assumed the thing that's disputed.
Right. So what do we do to avoid circular reasoning?
Yeah, or just begging the question more generally.
Right.
I think begging the question is one of the hardest things to diagnose, especially in the moment, right? The way it usually indicates itself is you're having a conversation with somebody about something that you disagree, but you can't quite put your finger on the origin of the disagreement.
I see.
Right? And what I would say is if you're having a conversation with someone and you can't see eye to eye, but you can't put your finger out why, one thing you might be disagreeing on is facts, right?
Okay.
And, but if you're not disagreeing about facts, you're probably disagreeing on assumptions. And what makes assumptions tricky is they're often not made explicit, right? They're just sort of things that you take to be the case that you're bringing to the argument. And if the person you're, dialoguing with doesn't share the same assumptions, it can start to feel like you're just talking past each other.
Right.
That's what happened to you and Fabrizio. It was just sort of like, well, I take it to be the case that you need this to get a system of ethics. We got this, therefore God. And you guys were like, no, that doesn't work that way.
Right.
Well, and rather than, in that case, we didn't want to turn the entire rest of the show
into a debate about
that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
just sort of skirted it. And
Right,
moved
the
on.
origin of morality and the evolution of moral and ethical
Yeah.
behavior in human civilization.
We could have put him to the mat.
Oh, faux show.
Well, there's an amazing case to be made for that, but it would have been the rest of the show.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think, it's really just, as an individual, you should be focusing on making your assumptions explicit. And if you're in an argument with somebody or in a debate with somebody, you can't quite figure out, it feels like you're talking past each other, see if you can hone in on what their assumptions are and then shift the conversation there, right? So if you're having a conversation with somebody about the nature of the existence of God, and they say, well, I take it to be the case that you can't have a system of ethics without an absolute moral authority. We've got a system of ethics, therefore we've got a moral authority, and that's God. Then you can say, wait a second, you're assuming that you need a moral authority to get an absolute system of ethics. That's what you've just assumed. I don't share that assumption. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Right.
Right. Or similar
Right.
thing with miracles. If you say like, nothing can violate laws of nature, therefore no miracles, the religious person can say, well, wait a second, I don't share that assumption that nothing can violate laws of nature. Let's have a conversation about
Right.
that. And so it pushes the conversation sort of up a level where you're talking about something that you can perhaps get a little traction on.
Yeah.
Well, and it's I think what it comes down to is something that's very hard to do when you're having these conversations, which is listen. Mm-hmm. That you really have to listen to the subtext. And it's not that the person talking to you is necessarily being deceptive, and neither are you.
Yeah.
But because they're coming from a place of subliminal assumptions that have never been questioned, they've never thought about before, you really have to listen to see what that sticking point is. And
we all have sort of infinite assumptions that we're operating under, and we frequently assume that other people share these assumptions.
Right.
And for the most part, that can work out. We assume that gravity is operating on all of us at the same rate,
The
and we
sun's going
assume
to come
that-
up tomorrow.
Yeah, all of these things, and we can pretty safely assume that that's going to work for all of us.
right.
So when we just operate under certain assumptions and assume that they work for everybody and they don't, that can be very surprising or very or it can be hard to get to the bottom of because you don't even realize you're making the assumption.
And you might not even be saying them explicitly.
Right.
They're just sort of built into what you're assuming. Right.
Right.
That's the
Like,
nature
for
of it.
instance, when I talk, in just my normal life, walking around talking to people, one assumption I might make about us as a community or as a group, I don't think anybody I'm talking to believes in a literal hell. Right? Maybe they do.
Yeah.
And so when you begin tinkering with the idea of, well, we don't need a God, we don't need this to have morality, I mean, that can be opening the airlock a little quickly.
Yeah. Someone's like, whoa, what about hell?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, you're one of them.
And they may actually, hell's just one example of that,
Yeah.
they may actually be in a place where that's something they think is keeping them on a straight and narrow. We're often asked as atheists, what keeps you from just raping and murdering people?
Without hell.
Without hell.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like,
And the answer is nothing.
right.
Boredom.
I murder the shit out of people.
We're still on for 3 o'clock.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
After
yeah,
we're
yeah.
done here, we're going
Yeah.
to go.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we're constantly asked that question, which is, and maybe that's another topic, but my answer to that when I'm asked that is, that question says everything about you and nothing about me. Mm-hmm. And
Aha, you flipped it on him.
flipped it on him.
You got him.
Yeah, and then I win.
Sucker.
You just got it. How to heretic, motherfucker.
And then you drop the mic, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, we paid for those.
And then I murder them in a twist that only Columbo would have seen coming.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Take that, Shyamalan.
All right. Well, have we begged this question adequately?
It's begged into the ground. Thanks a lot for coming out, Jimbo. We really appreciate it.
Good to talk with you guys.
Thanks for your time.
All right.
Moving on. Well, Uncle Dan,
Yeah.
we do from time to time in a segment like to meet some people, past
we meet
and present.
various and sundry, usually believers of some thing or other.
That's right. And sometimes we do it just for a bit of fun. Sometimes we do it just for a laugh.
Yeah, sure.
The Raelians,
Yeah.
the snake handlers. It's silly stuff.
Is it?
Yes, very
Deadly serious to somebody.
provably silly. But sometimes we offer as a public service this segment to say that let's get our shit straight, friends and neighbors and skeptics, right?
Let's just understand who's out there in the world for real.
Right. And let's if we're going to do something rash, let's make sure we're doing it rash
At the right person?
the right person. So today we are going to meet, let's start by calling them not Muslim.
Okay.
Today we're going to meet the Sikhs.
The Sikhs.
The Sikhs, my friend. And
Yeah.
these people are easy to spot.
Seek and ye shall find.
And they are generally wearing fantastic colored turbans.
Yes.
And men and women, men's tend to be actually a little more splashy,
Sure.
be a little more colorful.
Like you do.
So these I cannot stress enough.
Kind of like the bird world where the male
That's right.
plumage is a little bit brighter.
That's right. The birds of paradise. So I cannot stress enough how not Muslim these people are.
Well, you can stress it enough because we have to keep stressing it because people keep beating these people up thinking they're Muslims.
Right. These people, and we'll get into it, these people have very often been the victims of Muslim violence.
Of Muslim hate crime.
Yes.
By the way, don't beat up Muslims.
And
also.
So if you see a guy in a turban and you think he's a Muslim and you want to kick his ass, first of all, don't, because he's not a Muslim.
And second of all, don't, because go to hell. Why are you wanting to beat somebody up?
Right. And if you want to beat up a Muslim, don't.
Yeah.
Right. So
Seek therapy.
however, it is crazy how there have been some terrible crimes, and it's just doubly shitty that these people have literally nothing to do with any of the stuff you're mad about.
Right, exactly.
Right. So the Sikhs are
Tell that to Mohammed. Well, I don't know Mohammed.
the Sikhs are one of the youngest religions in the world.
Oh, it's very new.
Yeah. Now, relative to our friends the Mormons, our not so friends the Scientologists, they're quite old.
Yeah.
But as quote unquote major religions in the world go, the Sikhs claim to be the fifth largest religion in the world, which I'm not sure. I tried to research that a little more, but there's only 25 million Sikhs actually, which seems like a small number.
Yeah. I mean, that's, Mormons claim that those kind of numbers almost.
Yeah, the Mormons claim like 15-ish.
Yeah.
So it's probably half that.
Sikhs, here's what, maybe they're lumping all of the Christians into one thing. And, so it's like Muslims, Christians, and then we're not, and then all of the Hindus, and then what?
No.
The Buddhists, and then them. I don't know how.
No, I don't know how it works either.
Anyway.
So, how the categorization works. So, the Sikhs were founded in the late 16th century.
Okay.
In the 16th century, I mean, Sikh means disciple or learner. It's originated in the Punjab region of northwest India.
Yep.
On what is now the Pakistani border.
Right.
The end of the 15th century. The fundamental beliefs of Sikhism articulated in the sacred scripture Guru Granth Sahib include constant spiritual meditation of God's name, living a householder's life instead of monasticism, which is interesting. There really isn't professional clergy. It's more do God's work and do your meditative work and do all those things as you're living a practical life.
Right.
Which probably was a reaction to what was going on in India in the 15th century.
With Hinduism being Probably a lot of Hindus and Buddhists
but it's
being encouraged to go off to the monastic life.
That's right, exactly. And then living a householder's life, truthful action, righteousness, moral duty, being selfless in service to others, equality of all human beings, and believing in God's grace. Interestingly, it hasn't shaken out in practice so much, but they believe in total equality of the sexes.
Right.
Even though the 10 gurus that were the kind of prophets of the founders and prophets of Sikhism are all male.
Right.
And they say God has no gender on paper,
Okay.
but God is often described as a
if you
male.
look up his skirt, you can see something dangling.
And we'll get to the skirt in a second here. So the first guru was Guru Nanak and is highly revered. He had 9 successors that were not necessarily genetic, but Sikhism was founded under the Mughal rule in India. So this was under Islamic rule.
Right.
And they were there was a very rough, cruel domination of India.
Yes.
Right. So while Hinduism was going on, while Islam was going on, a lot of people say Sikhism kind of wanted to be this other, better way.
A bastion of hope and good feeling.
Exactly right. And so they live their life to avoid what are the 5 thieves.
Oh.
The 5 thieves being lust, rage, greed, attachment, and conceit.
Gordon that lives down the street.
And Gordon and that fucking prick, Gordon, I know he's got my sprinkler. So,
wait, what was the last one? I interrupted you.
Last ones were attachment and conceit. So they don't
Okay.
do attachment. So I guess.
So I guess Gordon can have the thing.
You don't want a Sikh carpenter because he's not going to put 2 things together. And they're also notable for the 5 Ks.
Oh.
Which are the outwardly visible evidence of their worship and their devotion.
And since it's K's, somebody has clearly worked very hard to cram these all into K words in English.
Alliteration was incredibly important to
the English translator of
to Guru
Sikhism.
Nanak. Actually, it's not in English. The 5 Ks are in Bengali, Kesh, which is uncut hair.
Oh, okay, right. They don't cut their hair.
They do not cut their hair because it's considered very important to their spiritual. It's a symbol of spiritualism. So they don't shave any part of their bodies. Men or women, they have from childhood grow their hair forever, essentially.
Right.
I guess it just breaks off or whatever. And the men especially, both female and male wear turbans. The men especially wear fantastically wound turbans. And I watched a video.
Oh yeah, they do a great job.
Online, and I was just like, okay, there's no way I could be a Hindu.
Or a Sikh.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sikh. Jesus.
It is weird.
Or there's no way I could be a Hindu either.
Well, yes. But these guys, I mean, they're not just like winding the turban itself. They got to wind all that hair up in there too.
Yeah.
They got to contain all the hair.
It's crazy. And then the incredible, if you think a swan napkin is a feat,
right.
I don't know how they do this. It's practice makes perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I can do a good double Windsor on my, on a strong day, but yeah, that's impressive.
So they wear the turban. They keep a comb as a symbol on them at all times of cleanliness. The kara is a steel bracelet, which is a symbol of your connection to God at all times.
And it can deflect bullets.
And if
you're fast enough.
They're a little bit like that too. Then there's the kachera, which is kind of their underpants that are their outer pants. That is kind of a commandment they all wear.
Oh, interesting.
And then the kirpan, which is the ceremonial and not so ceremonial dagger.
The knife that they are all required to have. The little baby sword, really.
They have a little sword, and oftentimes Sikhs will try to, as they're getting on planes or whatever, say, well, this is, and they're right, it's part of my religion, but they'll say it's just simply ceremonial. Well, the commandment is it's not ceremonial. It's actually to be used in your defense and the defense of the weak or the helpless.
It is a weapon.
It's a weapon.
It is specifically a weapon.
Right.
And it means you have to take the bus.
And
get on a train. You're not allowed on the planes.
You have to take a train. So it used to be that they would never have it off their body.
Right.
Because that's how important they thought the defense of the weak was.
Right.
And with the underpants, this is an interesting aside with the underpants, with the kachera, Sikh soldiers take them off, change them one leg at a time, meaning
they get one leg off, put another one.
It's right, and then they start putting another pair in case some shit goes down.
You got to be wearing them.
So this is clearly a people that came from a world where they felt the need for constant vigilance and defense.
Well, and fucking rules, man,
was a thing. So they have a very interesting concept of God that we can touch on briefly.
Okay.
As I mentioned before, God in Sikhism is known as Il Onkar, the one supreme reality, or the all-pervading spirit, which is taken to mean God. The spirit has no gender in Sikhism, though he's often characterized as often characterized as male. I'm not trying to misgender your deity, guys. It's also Akal Perk, beyond time and space, and Nirankar, without form. In addition, Nanak wrote that there were many worlds on which he has created life. So, like our Mormon friends, they believe there's life on other planets.
Yeah, pretty fancy.
So the beginning of their scriptures say that there is one supreme being, the eternal reality, the creator, without fear and devoid of enmity, immortal, never incarnated, self-existence, known by grace through the true guru. So this was never a man.
It's not even a person, really.
Right.
No flesh, no bone, just like a...
For the kids to understand, this is kind of the force.
It's a fog.
It's the force, and it's in all things, and they also have an interesting precept that they're not entirely right, and no other religion is entirely wrong.
Right.
So they're kind of cool like that.
Yeah, they're kind of cool people. I've met several Sikhs, and they've always been nice.
Yeah.
They're just good, nice people.
There's a really serious dedication to service of other people.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, at their headquarters at the Golden Temple in the Punjab, which is a beautiful building, if you should look it up, it's amazing.
Yes.
They serve 3,000 free meals every half hour.
Holy crap.
So any Sikh...
Eat your heart out, IKEA.
Any Sikh place of worship will serve free food.
Yeah.
To any comer.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people's temple, especially away from India, a lot of the Sikh quote-unquote temples are actually just somebody's home.
Right.
That they put a shrine, like everybody's got a shrine in their home and that's their temple sort of thing. And yeah, now that I think about it though, I don't know why I've been paying at the Indian restaurant that I go to because it's all Sikhs and I feel like they should probably just give it to me now.
We should point out how they are being unfaithful.
Yeah, exactly.
To their genderless God.
Because let me tell you something, I usually am pretty hungry when I go there. So
again, let me emphasize, these are not Muslims.
Right.
However, the Sikh scriptures have some Hindu terminology. It's a little, we find, Dan, with every one of these religions, they're a little bit of a pastiche.
It's a mishmash.
You take this thing and you take the good, you take the bad.
You take them both.
And there you've got a strange Punjabi...
Sikhism.
Yes, religion. So if they're close to anything, they're closer to Hinduism.
Right.
Right. They talk about the Vedas. They respect... there's kind of a respect for Vishnu and Shiva and Brahma. There's also some spiritual references, concepts from Hinduism. There is a reference in the Holy Book to respecting the Quran and Allah. That's it. That's as close as they come in their little pastiche.
Right.
So just to kind of put a finer point on it, in 1947, when India was partitioned, again, if you see an Englishman with a pencil over a map, slap him to sleep.
Right.
But in the partition, it turns out that most of the Sikhs were living on the wrong side. They were living... If they had to choose which side they'd want to live on, they'd rather live with the Hindus.
Right.
Because the Muslims were very, very cruel and terrible to them for a long, long time.
Right.
So a lot of violence broke out, and most of them fled across the line into India. Turns out the Sikhs had been kind of the merchant class in what became Pakistan. So they lost a lot when they came across. So there's been a lot of anger about that. They're not actually pacifists, as their dagger would have you understand.
Would point out, yes.
There is an entire Sikh regiment in the Indian Army who look very striking in their fantastic orange turbans and military uniforms.
Yeah.
And there was a separatist movement.
Do they put helmets on over the turbans? I feel like they should.
They've got to do it in combat. Unless there's a helmet under the turban.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So things got a little shitty for everybody involved in the 80s when there was the Khalistan separatist movement where they wanted their own homeland.
Yeah.
And there were terrorist groups and there was actual violence. And Indira Gandhi ordered a secret operation, and it got so out of control that her Sikh bodyguards assassinated her.
I guess I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy time, and then there was this attack on the Golden Temple, the holiest place, and a lot of killing took place. So, so they've got their shit.
Yeah,
they've got their shit.
They're not the Jains.
No,
who are also from the area who won't even harm a bug.
Right, who are careful to breathe, inhale, so they don't inhale a gnat.
Right.
So they have their shit. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
They're not Muslim.
Hey, wait. How do you figure?
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
Right. So that's there's plenty of other stuff to talk about with the Sikhs. They're super interesting. They are in large communities all over the world. My second home is Vancouver. There's a lot of them there. And in my neighborhood, one of the beat cops is a Sikh cop in the whole uniform, with the cool, and he's a fine looking man, and topped off with the police blue turban.
Oh, I love it.
He's looking good.
I love it.
So, they're not generally trouble, so let's not make trouble for them.
Well, also, again, don't also make trouble for the Muslims.
Exactly.
Just leave your fellow man alone, I think. But
Right.
also know that they might have a sword.
And he might have a little sword, and he might know how to use it.
He might.
Yeah.
You never know. I mean, they're pretty clever about their beard braiding. So
our little taxonomy lesson here, I hope, is helpful and maybe can stop some poor cabbie from getting punched in the face
or getting harassed or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, Al Qaeda. No, they're a totally different kind.
Here's the thing:
of terrorist.
if you're nice to our Sikh neighbors, they're going to be super nice to you. So
and get some of that food because damn,
it's good.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Well, Uncle Mark, there are some people that we need to thank.
There are people who we continue rattling our tin can and evangelizing as we do. We continue to squeeze them for dimes.
Yes, indeed. And there are those who have stepped up to the plate and to mix metaphors and have done us the solid of joining the legions of our patrons to help us pay the bills around here.
And we thank them very much.
Yes, so here's a few of those people. Thanks to Willow, to Kuiper Belt, to Daniel, great name, to Jen, and we each need to give somebody a saint.
Oh!
So you will give a saint to Barry.
Oh, my God. Well, obviously, Barry, your saint is Laverne of Boca Raton. She's one of the minor Boca Raton saints. There's
Right,
not
sure.
Some of the majors like
Saint Harvey.
yeah, and Edmund. Laverne is the patron saint of the Horsehead Nebula and President's Day mattress sales and salespersons. Yeah,
It's a good one, Barry. You're lucky.
yeah, very fortunate.
I'm going to say that Guido's saint. Now, I'm going to remind everybody before we get to Guido's saint that if you pledge us money at the $5 per episode amount, that's where you qualify for your own saint.
Yeah.
At the $10 level, you qualify for your own heaven, and that's a very special.
And it's a bit more of a writing assignment, but we don't mind taking it on.
Right, exactly. So Guido, your saint is Saint Olnar.
Oh my God, not Olnar.
Of Oslo.
Yes.
He is the patron saint of ski fighting and midsummer fertility rituals.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I knew about the ski fighting. Right. I mean, we all know about the ski fighting.
Right. But who would have seen the other coming?
Well, congratulations, Guido. That's a very exceptional saints. And I see you out there, Guido.
Thank you guys so much for all of your support. And if you'd like to join these legions of really the best people in the world.
Yeah, everybody else is garbage.
You can do so by going to howtoheretic.com and clicking on the Patreon button.
Yeah. join up there. And if you don't have some cash to throw at us now, we won't judge you too harshly.
Right.
But in the meantime, you could make us feel a little bit better by going to your Stitcher, your iTunes, giving us a 5-star review and saying something nice, even if it's a terrible, terrible lie.
Yeah, I mean, if your impulse is, you like the show, but maybe it's just 4 stars, fuck off. Give us 5.
Yeah,
that's not how this works.
And if you really hate the show, remember, it's scathing atheist.
Right.
Yes. So, all right.
So we'll just move on then.
Thanks, people.
Well, Uncle Mark.
Uncle Dan.
You know who everybody in the whole wide world is just terrified of?
Steve Bannon.
Well, yes, that's true. I was thinking of Satan.
Oh, Lucifer, the devil.
The man himself,
Old
Beelzebub.
Scratch. Yeah.
But you know who ain't afraid of him, I think, is one Mr. Lucien Greaves.
Who is our special guest today?
Hey, Lucien,
Greaves.
how are you, man?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
For our listeners who may not know, Lucien Greaves is the founder or co-founder, I guess, of the Satanic Temple here in these United States.
That is correct.
And current figurehead, I would say. Is it what is your official title there with TST?
As a co-founder, it was pretty much up to me to pick my own title, but I didn't want to pick something like pretentious, like Magus or Grand Magician or primary Antichrist or whatever.
Right.
Whatever titles people put upon themselves. So I just settled for spokesperson because I think most people are going to see me in interviews, hear me in interviews, read the things I write. But we don't like to give each other lofty titles that are unearned by activity. So
we can't call you
I guess co-founder and spokesperson seems to work just fine.
How about assistant to the regional manager? That would be.
I was thinking prophet, seer, and revelator.
Yeah, that's big in our neighborhood, man. That's and there's a job opening, Lucien, by the way.
Yeah,
in our neck of the
Mormons
woods.
The Mormons need a guy. So if you want to jump on that, now's the moment.
Well, I want to ask you about the work of what the temple is and the work it's doing. But first, I want to say I spent a good portion of yesterday watching some of your presentations and some of your interviews. And I don't know if this is too forward, but my first question is, will you marry me? Because that looks like a lot of fun.
As an officiant or as your significant other?
Can it be both?
Absolutely. I was going to recommend just that.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about the Satanic Temple and how it got started, why it got started, just give our listeners who may not be familiar, because I imagine, I don't know if you know this, but many of our listeners are sort of taking their first tentative steps out of the world of religion and into the world of non-religion or atheism or whatever. And you may still be very scary to them. So talk to us about what you are.
Well, as you've probably seen in some of my presentations, we're very clear that we're a non-theistic religion, meaning we don't believe in a literal Satan. And people see that in collusion with some of our political activities, and then they get the impression that the Satan is merely a ploy. And then we often get the question, why couldn't we use something else, use another name rather than Satan, because Satan is so scary and seems offensive to the majority Christian population in the United States.
Sure.
What this fails to understand is that this is meaningful to us, even though we don't believe in a literal Satan. The metaphorical value is strong, and we believe in the power of art and ritual to enlighten and inform and enrich our lives and contextualize our goals. And we fight for that recognition for non-theistic religious groups. The humanist groups seem to understand us a little better sometimes than some of the capital A atheist groups.
Oh, interesting.
Understanding how this can be useful in our own personal lives and not just a tool by which we say fuck off to the Christian majority. although that is sometimes a pleasant byproduct of what we do.
Indeed.
We focus on our own affirmative values to that end, and where religious liberties are concerned, we're fighting firstly for our own inclusion rather than anybody else's exclusion. And we've gained a kind of high-profile prominence by fighting for our inclusion in places where religious liberty has been invoked to open up public forums for religious inclusion in the public square.
Right.
Usually when that's done without any thought that an alternative religious group besides some Christian group, who they're usually trying to open a public forum to the benefit for, will come along. And so people see a lot of what we do is terribly hilarious, right? But it's a very serious battle to fight right now, especially given the administration in office right now, the rising threat of theocracy, and we're trying to make sure that pluralism is respected, and in the First Amendment in its true form, true religious liberty is respected as well. We have several pending lawsuits coming up where we are going to litigate on behalf of our own religious liberties, and of course we have no idea where any of these cases will go, but we do feel, in all humility, that some of the lawsuits will present have a real chance at changing the entire landscape of the church-state debate.
I'd like to get into that, those lawsuits in a minute, but one of the things that I wanted to talk first about, you said that you guys are fighting primarily for your inclusion in these things rather than the exclusion of others, but my understanding was that a lot of the fights that you guys have engaged in have been in order to or at least it seemed like, and I guess my interpretation of what I was reading about was that you were fighting. You would say, I mean, the messaging that I got was that you would say, look, we'd rather that nobody had a religious their religious iconography on the public space, or on the Capitol grounds in Oklahoma or whatever.
But as
long as somebody else is doing it, we're going to do it too. So is that not right? Wouldn't you rather that there be nobody doing it?
Right. Well, I mean that's more the kind of removed perspective. I mean, it's obviously, I think that everything would work better if people could just leave their religion out of the public square, primarily because there's not going to be an open forum big enough to include everybody, to give a full education on world religions. But what I mean is the method by which we do that is that we're fighting for our inclusion. We're not fighting directly against Ten Commandments monuments on public grounds. And in fact, if they can respect pluralism in the public square, I think that is and should be legal. It might not be tenable from a management perspective of
every public space being a sculpture garden, right?
Right. Talk about a massive waste of at least time.
The Hindus would need,
if not money.
They'd need 70% of the Capitol grounds, just the Hindus. So,
Right, exactly.
I wanted to ask you too, and circle back a little bit, Lucien, about how you go out of your way to talk about affirmative values. And watching you in interviews, and watching you on tape debate some of these conservative politicians, that I think it's interesting how confounding that is to them.
It can't be anything but, because they're brought face to face with a certain cognitive dissonance of theirs. I'm able to use the very rhetoric that they thought they could only use exclusively.
Right.
Half the time I'm on with people who like to rant and rave in favor of religious liberty, but then the Satanist comes on, and all of a sudden, unbridled religious liberty doesn't seem like a great idea anymore.
Right.
All of a sudden, government intervention on what's legitimate religious expression or even a legitimate religion sounds like a great idea to them. And that in no way comports with a true definition of religious liberty. I'm able to go on the conservative shows and talk about free speech and First Amendment values.
Right.
And the Tea Party upholders of those values have a real difficult time reconciling my point of view with what they thought they believed, but didn't realize that they objected to until a hypothesis had come to fruition. This idea that another religious group could come and claim those same grounds for inclusion.
Right.
Then we're often brought up against these kind of facile arguments that, well, there's the will of the majority and all that type of thing. But those are not very convincing arguments by any means when we're talking about individual liberty.
Well, they're not when the Constitution of the United States of America itself is so explicitly there to provide protections for the minority opinion also. And, the First Amendment is there to protect not just the most important, the most popular religion, but its language is very broad to make sure that it includes all religion. And that's
why I refused to get into that debate with Tucker Carlson. I was on his show twice now in this past 3 months or so, and they're both available on YouTube, but both times he was trying to discredit us as a religious organization. He was saying we're not a real religion. He wasn't qualifying what he meant by a real religion. And rather than justifying us as a religion in his, whatever his terminology was, it's impossible to engage in that debate when you don't know what the definitions are.
Right.
I instead just stuck to the free speech grounds and said that it didn't matter whether we were a religion or not. Free speech applies to all and isn't the exclusive domain of religions either. And then he shifted to this argument where he didn't believe we had a large membership base. And I decided not to argue that either. And I said, well, there could be just two of us or one.
Right.
and he was forced to agree with those things,
yes.
Begrudgingly, of course. He wasn't happy about that. But yeah, those are great victories for me when I can go on the conservative shows and throw their own words back at them in a way they never thought they'd hear it used before, but hopefully make some people think. And there is some evidence of that. I often see messages and comments from people who are actually viewers and listeners of some of the conservative shows I'm on, and they're not all as hypocritical as some of the hosts or some of the other viewers. There are some people who actually believe in a purer form of the values they all claim to espouse, and they congratulate me on doing a good job, or otherwise let me know that I had given them something to think about.
That's pretty amazing. And I think part of that too, again, going back to your affirmative values, is because you don't spend time tearing down Christianity or tearing down dominant religions. You're just simply asking for a place at the table without really a critique, an obvious critique. I think they don't know how to get a hold of that. They don't know how to get their hands around that.
I think that's what really began infuriating some of the politicians I would debate with when we were engaged in the Ten Commandments debate, which we are still now, but it started in Oklahoma.
Right.
Oklahoma put up a Ten Commandments monument on their Capitol grounds, and they said that because it was a private donation, this wasn't an Establishment Clause issue, but also because they opened up the grounds to private donations, we were able to apply to donate our own Satanic monument to complement and contrast the Ten Commandments. And, of course, there's a lot more online that talks about the meaning and symbolism behind our own monument, but
before you go on,
in short,
can I just take a quick second to describe this monument that you guys made?
Which is a beautiful piece of art.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful piece of art.
It's absolutely stunning. It's actually when I heard that you guys were going to do this, because, I've been covering this beat for a while, I was worried. Because this was sort of your first big splash onto the national scene, and I've seen a lot of people try to come up with their own Christmas thing for the thing, and they come up with some half-assed sort of
a vinyl banner or
something that says atheists like Christmas too or whatever.
And good for them, good on them.
It's fine, but it never looks great. What you guys came up with is gorgeous. Yeah. It's this beautiful goat-headed god, Baphomet, however you want to pronounce it, and and he's sitting on this throne
like a sage with two initiates or young students standing
two
next to him.
adorable little children looking up adoringly at this guy. And it is exactly so spot on the thing to scare the bejesus out of all of these Christians.
But aesthetically, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
we
piece
just
of
have
art.
to congratulate you on that.
Oh, thank you. Well, there was a lot of thought that went into the symbolism and proposed message of that, too.
Absolutely.
And one of the primary things we wanted to emphasize in that were these binary elements. You know, it was part human, part animal with the goat head. Mm-hmm. It was pointing up and pointing down, above and below. There was the male and the female on either side, and there was the caduceus in the middle, signifying negotiation and reconciliation. And with those binaries all together in one spot, we wanted to put forward a message of reconciliation of opposites, this idea that, you know, differing points of view can coexist in a pluralistic society on the same grounds, and kind of uphold that message that that we live in this constitutional system where, insofar as items of religion are concerned, the government engages in government viewpoint neutrality. They don't tell people how to think in matters of conscience like this. And we thought that was a very American message. That was a very constitutionally aligned message. But given what it is, of course, it wasn't a surprise that there was the pushback we had received as well.
Well, and that's kind of your whole gig, is that you make sure that your message is something that really nobody could object to. The message itself, the ideas that you're putting forward, are clean and human and beautiful.
And fundamentally, as you say, part of the American fabric.
They're pro-social, beautiful things, and then also they come with an inverted pentagram on them. and that's
well, you know, but yeah, and that's what causes some people to say, well, why don't you get rid of the inverted pentagrams? Why don't you get rid of the Satan? And I think that misses the entire point.
Absolutely.
Why don't people get rid of their fear of symbols and realize who's fighting the good fight? I mean, I think that the burden then to change the thinking is put upon other people for the better, the people with a superstitious fear of these things. And we see this in the most absurd ways. We have a campaign where we're fighting against corporal punishment in schools, and we're offering a religious exemption based on the fact that we have a tenet that the body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. Children who are in corporal punishment school districts can fill out that exemption, and if they're still beaten, the Satanic Temple will litigate against the school district. We haven't had a test case of that yet, but we have put up some billboards in Texas in areas where the school districts beat their kids. And we have a website set up, protectchildrenproject.com, that talks about this fight against corporal punishment and how corporal punishment is actually not a good corrective. All the empirical evidence shows that punitive beatings cause behavioral problems and cognitive deficits and all the rest. But the outrage we get for the fact that we're the Satanists and this kind of speculation that our ultimate goal is to harm children, and just that blind adherence to tribal symbolism that causes people to just refuse to believe that even beating children could be a bad thing if the Satanists are against it.
Right.
And people are going by a biblical edict, or what's supposed to be a biblical edict. I guess that's disputed, and I don't know enough about that biblical passage that to spare the rod is to spoil the child. That's but that's what we butt up against all the time in this argument. You start talking empirical proof, and eventually you're going to run up against religious indoctrination.
It goes out the window very, very quickly.
It almost sounds like.
At what point do you consider that you're wrong? You know that your activities are overwhelm your symbolic norms. That your symbolism doesn't save you from your
bad behavior. Your stupid idea.
Yeah, exactly.
It does sound almost like what you're saying is that the Bible may not actually be the best arbiter of moral or ethical behavior that we've all been taught that it is.
Wait. But it's okay. I'll allow that. But it's still, for science, it's perfect.
It's the best science book we've got, right?
Well, you have to admit, though, the current manifestation of evangelical Christendom that we see now has very little to do with biblical scripture, and yet it's not terribly moral nonetheless.
Well, that's true.
But that's kind of opened the door for, we feel, our religious claims to be more easily applied. And I've brought up Hobby Lobby many times when I've gone out speaking at lectures, and if you've watched some of them, you may have seen me talk about this before. But
please tell me that you bought the crafting supplies for Baphomet from Hobby Lobby. Please tell me that clay came from Hobby Lobby. Sorry, little aside.
Well, the interesting thing about Hobby Lobby to me is there was no question of religious authenticity related to Hobby Lobby. There's all this concern as to whether the Satanic Temple can be considered legitimately religious or not, especially being that we're non-theistic. And I've always held to this idea that if it's something that's fundamental to your sense of cultural and personal identity, and you're being burdened by some kind of government restriction or compulsory activity, you should be able to make some kind of claim for exemption, and that shouldn't be left just to superstitious groups.
Right. Since you've brought it up a little bit, what we haven't done is gone through and sort of talked about what the tenets of the Satanic Temple are, and also who Satan is to you guys. And maybe we should get that sort of out there while we have this conversation.
Well, I mean, Satan to us is a very powerful metaphorical character. It stands for the ultimate rebel against tyranny. We're looking at the Miltonian Satan, the Satan of the Romantic literary movement that was that stood in rejection of a tyrannical system overall.
Right.
And you know, the biblical character of Jehovah really does a lot to kind of to establish himself as a tyrant over mind and body. And to us, Satan is emblematic of Enlightenment values, and which need to be defended.
Indeed.
Vigorously and often, and especially now.
Yeah, so can you talk about some of the tenets of the Satanic Temple? What are the most important values that you guys hold?
Well, when it comes to our lawsuits, the most important that we invoke so far, or have had to invoke in the lawsuits to show that these are part of our deeply held beliefs, are, like I said, the bodily autonomy, the fact that we view one's body as inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. And when it comes to our reproductive rights cases, we've also invoked our tenet that beliefs should conform to the best scientific understanding of the world, and we should take care to never distort scientific facts to fit our beliefs.
Right.
Which a lot of people feel is anti-religious, but of course, you know, we're fighting for non-theistic recognition as well, and beyond that, we have such tenets as one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and justly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego your own. And people are fallible. If we make a mistake, we should do our best to rectify it and resolve any harm that has been caused. And every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word.
I love it.
Now, compare these 7 tenets of ours against the 10 Commandments, and tell me which one directly contradicts the First Amendment,
right,
and which one can coexist with it.
Exactly right. The 10 Commandments is, you know, starts off with a whole bunch of God setting himself up, as you say, as dictator, then moves to a couple useful
Right, thou
ones.
shalt have no gods before me, and that's explicitly against free exercise.
Right, exactly.
You can't speak the Lord's name in vain. That's
Yep.
against free speech. You don't have the freedom of any other religious congregation in amongst those Ten Commandments. And often when the Ten Commandments arguments are made, they only bring up two.
Yes.
Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. And you're asked, well, what is so offensive about that? As though the Ten Commandments invented these edicts, and
Yes.
and nobody followed any of that before. But to my mind, it's offensive to put those alongside thou shalt respect the Sabbath and keep it holy,
Right.
as though to not respect the Sabbath is tantamount to murder.
Yeah. And honor thy father and thy mother. Well, some people's fathers and mothers are shitbags. And
I had that discussion. I gave a recent presentation in Arizona, and somebody during the Q&A asked what I could possibly have against that one. I don't know why she brought that one up either, because I hadn't said anything directly about it, and I'm sure there's, I don't object to thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal without the, there's those caveats that I don't feel that they're owned by a religious group.
right.
But I gave the same answer. I tied it into our corporal punishment campaign. And in that campaign, when we were rolling it out, people warned me. They said that we didn't want to target children because we were allowing children to fill out these exemptions that will turn in on their behalfs. And I was saying, well, if you have an abusive parent who's willing to extend that abuse into the schools and allow the school administrators to beat their children, fuck them.
Right.
Why should we have any respect for them, and why should the child respect a father or mother who's going to put them in that situation?
Honor is a two-way street. Respect is a two-way street. And then coveting gets pretty complicated. Like, really? We can't just desire a thing like lunch? And oxes, which are amazing.
Yeah, who doesn't want an ox?
Or an ass.
I feel like we all want an ox and an ass every now and then.
And
You should do an episode, Anecdotes in Coveting. You should put out a general call for stories of coveting.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I love it. What do you covet, Lucien?
What are you coveting, Lucien?
Oh, well, that's a separate episode, I think. I have to come up with those things.
Yeah, so I think the tenets are amazing, and if that was a guidepost for people to generally live their lives, I can't imagine, if we could just chuck the Ten Commandments as this idiotic idea that it's the underpinning of all the canon of Western law, and have something like the seven tenets of the Satanic Temple.
Well, there was a great little episode like a couple years ago, one of those little-known Satanic Temple episodes, where there was some little local jurisdiction at a city council where somebody was trying to pass a resolution emphasizing these concepts of compassion and empathy, and maybe something else that seemed to fall in with our seven tenets. And there was some conservative Christian on the city council who was opposed to this resolution. And as a way to illustrate his opposition, he presented the city council with our seven tenets, but he did so without mentioning that they were from the Satanic Temple.
Oh.
And when he revealed that, I guess that was supposed to be the moment at which everybody learned that those tenets were exactly wrong and that the resolution shouldn't be passed.
Oh my God, there was widespread panic in the room.
Right.
That's so funny. What is
right. It didn't cause him introspection to consider what made his religion superior if they were going to be opposed to these things.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, you'd mentioned in one of your lectures the Satanic Panic, and I'm nearly 50, and I was very much around in Mormon Salt Lake when that was going on in the 80s and into the 90s. Are you still experiencing a lot of the afterglow of the Satanic Panic, and is that useful to you guys?
I think it was useful to self-identified Satanists in the 90s who didn't didn't do anything but talk about what they're not, and got a lot of attention for talking about what they don't do.
Right.
They didn't do anything really at all but talk about how they don't cannibalize or sacrifice infants. And they gave a kind of dignity to the claims by addressing them so thoroughly all the time without ever really investigating where those claims came from and who was making them. But the Satanic Temple has what we call our Gray Faction, and we are active in going after and debunking the propagators today of satanic panic and the people in the mental health community who still use recovered memory therapies to derive narrations of ritual abuse and satanic activity. I'm sure you're aware of that aspect of the satanic panic as well.
That was going on in my community to a huge extent, and Dan, I think it was with yours as well.
I have a personal encounter with it myself. But why don't you talk a little bit about what happened with that was that people would go into their therapist, and their therapist would say what?
Well, there was this kind of Freudian notion that any kind of psychological melees could be traced back to trauma, and there became a real focus upon the notion of sexual trauma, the idea that sexual abuse was uniquely traumatic in a way that it caused a kind of cognitive overload. This was so shameful and emotionally painful that the mind couldn't bear to recall it. So it would be compartmentalized in another part of one's mind, and that part of the mind would be amnesiac for the other parts. It became a separate entity almost. It became a possession case of an alternate personality. And the only way it was thought to kind of integrate these personalities was to reach out and talk with them and get them to abreact to what had happened to them. So people would go in and therapists would do things like guided imagery sessions, dream analysis, and hypnotherapy to try to get people to regress and recall these presumed memories of trauma that were there. So they had an idea of what they were looking for when they would be regressing somebody anyway. And the client, of course, knows this notion too. It's prevalent in our culture, this idea that people repress sexual trauma.
Right.
And especially if you're talking about somebody who must have had a certain type of trauma and they don't bear physical scars that are unaccounted for, it only really leaves one kind. And we see, the same thing with the alien abduction phenomenon, which was also more prevalent in those times in the 80s and 90s, where people would regress under hypnosis, and they would construct these narratives that they would come to believe.
Right.
They would essentially they would be told that they're recovering memories from earlier in their lives, but were essentially being guided to create memories. That's the claim. Is that right?
Right. Either wittingly on the part of the therapist or not. Right. And some of them seem crass enough that they may well have just been, willingly planting memories in people's heads. I think people give some of the therapists too much credit for their unwitting role, but I've argued directly with some of these people. They know the evidence, and and yet they'll simply ignore it. And at that point, you have to wonder if they're doing what they're doing intentionally. But what we want people to know, and what Gray Faction and particularly in the Satanic Temple, and I would encourage people to check out our website, grayfaction.org. We've done our own original research on these things.
Oh, cool.
Is that this is still going on. The propagators of satanic panic, the therapists in the mental health field, they were never censured. They still have their licenses. We exposed a story a couple years ago of a woman who's a clinical psychologist. Her name is Ellen Lachter in California, and she was treating a woman, a multimillionaire client of hers from New York named Gigi Jordan. And Gigi Jordan ended up murdering her own 8-year-old autistic son because she felt that her son wasn't actually autistic, but what was manifesting itself to look like autism was actually a reaction to him having been abused by some unseen satanic cult. And when you look at Ellen Lachter's own website, you see all this talk about satanic conspiracy, Illuminati. I mean, she's obviously fucking deranged. And we felt that this gave us, her public statements were enough to give us grounds to submit a complaint against her and ask that her license be investigated, as well as investigation into her role in the death of this child, because we felt strongly that if this child's mother had not gone to Ellen Lachter, but had gone to somebody competent, had gone to somebody grounded in the real world, in rational thinking, she might not have murdered her kid. We simply got a message back from the California Board of Psychology Licensing saying they looked into it and they didn't see anything wrong. Ellen Lachter was part of an organization called the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation, and a special interest group that studies mind control and ritual abuse. The ISSTD is still a professional organization in action today. They still propagate the idea of multiple personality disorder, now called dissociative identity disorder. They have a conference coming up in March, and some of the items in the conference include, hypnosis, a lot of hypnosis seminars, a hypnosis on prenatal trauma. Which, of course, is already a lunatic idea. That's not how cognition works. It's not how human development works. But there's also a presentation by a woman named Eileen Aveni, and it's about satanic cult abuse, ritual abuse, and mind control, and how to bring people from the dark side to the light side back to God. Oh, wow. And this organization is taken seriously. And offers continuing education units. And we're horrified by that, and we're trying to bring an end to this practice, and we're trying to bring it to light that these people are who they are and they operate as they do. And we're not silent about the fact that ultimately we hope to destroy their careers, have their licenses removed, and have them subject to public ridicule for the rest of their fucking miserable lives.
I mean, it's junk science and it's clinical abuse, and it's absolutely bullshit that and it's been the state of California.
It's proven harmful. It's ruined lives again and again, and I just have no sympathy for these people at all. And I've argued with them. I've been arguing this fight. I've been fighting this fight for well before I even founded the Satanic Temple, and just the failure to confront the failings in their own methods, even when it's is proven dangerous as it is. There's no excuse for it at all, and there's no excuse for the spinelessness of the licensing boards.
Indeed. Well, you're one of the original heretics. You're out there doing the Dark Lord's work, and we appreciate it.
And so, last question, I guess, would be Rosemary's Baby. Great movie or greatest movie?
Oh, it's funny. We were just having this discussion the other day. There was these movies I loved, like when I was in high school, when I was younger. Movies like The Exorcist, movies like Rosemary's Baby.
Right.
Now I can hardly watch them because I see them as this
horrible
propaganda. Yeah. Right.
Even though they were just
great horror films at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's...
But even I have my Google alert set for exorcism, because exorcism's still a problem, too. People die in exorcisms, and Jesus, first and foremost, was an exorcist, and, exorcisms can include beatings, burnings, whatever else, and it's this kind of untouchable, backward religious ritual because it's so intertwined with Christianity. But I keep getting these alerts because I'm trying to alert myself to exorcism crimes and misdoings and deaths. Yeah. I keep getting alerts about this show on Fox for The Exorcist, and I just keep hoping that it fails and gets... I've never watched a single episode, and I keep just thinking I want to see that show go off the air.
Well, what you described of exorcism just makes it sound kind of sexy to me, but that's all right. Well, I can see why if you're not willingly participating, it might be less fun.
So, Lucien, if people want to find you out in the universe, what's the best ways to find you in your work?
Or they want to join up, what can they do?
Well, always check our website, thesatanictemple.com. Don't forget the before. Mm-hmm. We have our various other websites for campaigns, but they're integrated there. People interested in Gray Faction, of course, go directly to Gray Faction, grayfaction.org. And you can find me on Twitter at Lucien Greaves.
Well, excellent. Lucien, thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again sometime.
Yeah, anytime. Let me know. Thank you.
Right on. Thanks, Lucien. Well, friends, that's it for this week's show. And before we go, just let me say, you fuckers in Washington, I know it's Yelm, not Yelp. Enough of this. Okay.
We've learned valuable lessons. It's
Yes.
true. Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Not about that Yelp thing anymore.
It's
but
settled.
About the rest of it. Send us an email if you want to, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you want to yell at Dan, you can leave us a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986.
Yeah, hey, thanks again to all of our patrons for making this thing possible. If you want to help out and do your part, you can go to howtoheretic.com and click on that Patreon tab.
Yeah, and throw some money at us in the name of the devil.
Yes, indeed.
And we'd like to thank Cody Layton for editing the show.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.